Everyone, welcome to today's session where we are going to look at the poem Going by Philip Larkin. This poem was originally titled Dying Day. It was written in 1946 but was published in 1955 in his second volume of poetry, The Less Deceived. And it was this publication of his second volume, The Less Deceived, which established Larkin's reputation as a preeminent poet of his generation. Larkin is also acknowledged as the key figure of the poets group, the movement poetry in 1950s. Larkin was initially inspired by Eliot and Yeats, but unlike Eliot and Yeats, whose writings are obscure and highly intellectual, Larkin developed and started writing in his own distinctive colloquial style. Larkin also composed a companion piece of this poem, Going, which is titled as Coming. Going deals with the theme of death, whereas Coming talks about renewal and rebirth. So here is the poem, and as you can see that this is a short poem of 10 lines separated into 3-line stanzas with the final single line. And as the most common theme of Larkin's poetry is death, this poem too deals with the death, but interestingly in the whole poem, as you can see and as we will read it, there is not a single mention of this word death in this whole poem, whereas he is referring to it. So let's see the poem. I am reading out it to you. There is an evening coming in across the fields, one never seen before, that lights no lamps. So here, as if you observe particularly this first line, there is an evening coming in. Here the poet is depicting the arrival or the coming of evening. Evening is the part of the day which proclaims its ending, which is the end part of the day, which proclaims that it is going to an end. So in the similar way, this evening is referring to the man's impending doom, man's impending death, or man's later phase of life which is coming in. There is an evening coming in, and here this word coming is in direct contrast with the title Going. So if the death is coming, then what is going? And we can sense, we can notice that the going is life itself. There is an evening coming in across the fields. The poet can note at a distance, though death is not so nearby, death is not at close, but across the fields it can be seen. That means in any phase of life, even in young age or not so old age, man can navigate this impending ultimate doom of man's life. There is an evening coming in across the fields, one never seen before. Now, as we are familiar with the context, that this context is about death, that in the context of death this talk is going on. So this phrase, now this phrase, one never seen before, is making perfectly its sense. One never seen before, because it is understandable that when man encounters death, it is his first and only time. So one never seen before, he has never experienced such experience before. One never seen before, that lights no lamps. Now here there is a irony, or there is a we can say slight turn, because we know that after the evening night descends, which causes lamps to burn. But this evening of life, this evening of man's life, it causes such darkness which has no hope for any light or burning any lamp. It is an ultimate darkness. In other words, it can be said that mankind cannot escape or can do nothing of this ultimate or impending inevitability of death. So here, in a very elliptical manner, in a very allusive manner, the poet is referring to death with the help of this word, this phenomenon, evening. So here is the use of this poetic device, metaphor, and metaphorically he is referring to death through the use of this word evening. So let's move on to the next tercet. Tercet is a stanza of 3 lines. I'm reading it. Silken it seems at a distance, yet when it is drawn up over the knees and breast, it brings no comfort. So here what poet wants to convey, or what the speaker is saying, that yes, when we observe evening, if we see it literally, then when we observe evening, it seems very pleasant, very smooth and soft, like a silk. Silken it seems at a distance, but after its arrival, it is there is a night, there is a darkness. Silken it seems at a distance. In other words, now figuratively, if we take the same subject, then in our young age, the prospect of death or extinction, it doesn't bother us much, because we know that, or we feel it at a young age. We feel that these matter like death and doom and end of life is a long way. This is a matter of long way, and it doesn't terrorize us. We don't feel much terror when we are at a distance, when we are at our young age. Yet when it is drawn up over the knees and breast, but when in the later part of life, when man feels that death upon him, when man very concretely feels or senses the very presence of death in his life, and he feels that this death is gradually going to consume his life, consume his existence, in that, at that phase, at that stage, it brings no comfort. So yet when it is drawn up over, it means when physically, when concretely man begins to feel the very presence of death in his life, impending death in his later part of his life, yet when it is drawn up over the knees and breast, it brings no comfort. There is no comfort. A man becomes restless. He feels very discomfort about his, and he also feels helpless, that he is going to towards his end with the passing of each day. Now here I would like to add that this line, it brings no comfort. As a reader, we can interpret it in one more way, that it is obvious that death will bring no comfort. So why the speaker is stating this? Why there is no need of writing this line, it brings no comfort? It is obvious that the phenomenon or prospect of ending one's life will bring no comfort. But there is one more concept, or there is a belief, or that some people consider, or there is a concept in which there is a consideration that death is just like a release from the hardships of life. But here the speaker might be suggesting the fact that as man begins to feel, begins to realize that that his end is nearby in his later part of his life, this concept, this argument, this idea becomes doesn't convince him at all. He doesn't find himself convinced with it, though in his early age he feels that yes, death is just like a blessed sleep. It will release him from his hardships when he is in his hectic lifestyle, in his energetic and dynamic mode in his youth. But as he goes nearby his ending, he doesn't find comfort even in this idea of releasing from his hardships of life. So this is what we can interpret here. And the next stanza: where has the tree gone that logged earth to the sky? What is under my hands that I cannot feel? And the last final line: what loads my hands down? Now these are the concluding lines of this poem, and in these concluding lines, consecutively, Larkin seems to interrogate the readers. He is posing this rhetorical question in order to make the readers think over these things, over these questions which he is posing, and in this case supposedly to the readers. Where has the tree gone that locked earth to the sky. Now here the tree, the presence of this tree is just like a presence of, or the continuation of the presence of man's existence on earth, which is just like the existence of man, the presence of man's life on earth is just like a connection of earth, connection between earth and the ephemeral and the ethereal to the sky, to the ethereal life. But when this tree goes, the disappearance of tree suggests what it suggests. The disappearance of tree suggests the man's disconnection, the man's ending of life, and which causes the disconnection of this connection of this cord between earth to the sky. What is under my hands that I cannot feel? What loads my hands down? Now here the speaker is conveying that this thought or this call of the death is so paralyzing that it makes him unable to act or move his hands, which is just like the extension of his consciousness. They fail to act, they fail to move or act. So the thought or the call of death makes everyone so helpless that even the active organs of man's body become still and stagnant. Such is the experience, or such we can say experience of death, or the thought or call of death. What is under my hands that I cannot feel? What loads my hands down? The weight of death is so much on man's existence that he fails to act upon. He fails in his every act. He can't do anything. He renders, it makes him helpless, this fact of death in his life, this thought, this call of death. So after reading this poem, or as we have completed this poem, you can very well notice that this poem is made up of 10 unrhymed lines. And after reading this, we can say that this poem is perfectly portraying Larkin's intimate concern with the world, in which human beings have been caught or trapped in time, despair and disappointment, because this limited presence or existence on this earth makes man helpless. He can't do anything about it. So that's what this poem conveys. And while wrapping up this lecture, I would like to add that when Larkin composed this poem, when he was meditating through this poem, when he was meditating upon these profound themes like life, profound aspects of life and death, he was only 23 years old. And this poem is also remarkable for its metaphorical quality. So that's all for today. I look forward to see you in the next session. Thank you for listening.